Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff, they protect and they comfort me. Some translations say the dark valley of death, which makes this a popular verse to share at funerals. It makes it a great verse to share at funerals. But I think it's an even better verse to share with those who are going through real life, who recognize that on some days we get it right, but often and maybe even most of the time we mess it up. And it's true that Jesus will be with us in death. When we pass from this life to the next life, certainly Jesus will meet us there. But it's also true that Jesus will also always be there with us when we go through the dark valleys in life. We all go through seasons of life that are best described as dark valleys. Often those are of our own making. We make decisions and choices that lead us into a dark place that David, who wrote Psalm 23, describes as dark valleys. Last week we talked about Jesus restoring us onto right paths. When we take a detour, when we end up in a dark valley, he doesn't just leave us there to die. He doesn't leave us there in judgment and condemnation. No, this verse tells us he draws close to us. He comes close beside me with grace and mercy and love, and he restores me back onto the right path. He loves me, he comforts me, he protects me, and he leads me back onto the right path. Romans 8:1 says that there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And that includes those dark valley seasons where we have wandered off. Those don't lead to death, because it says that the life-giving Spirit has freed us from the power of death. And then if you go on in that chapter, you come to these beautiful verses at the end of Romans 8 that says absolutely nothing can separate you from the love of God. So God never turns his back on you. He never rejects you. He always comes and meets you with grace and mercy and love. What's even more beautiful about that section, that comes right after a section where Paul, who wrote Romans 8, he says that no matter how hard he tries, in spite of his best efforts, he always fails to live the life that he knows that he should live. And then he moves into Romans 8. He says, even though that's true, there's no condemnation because God gives me life and nothing can separate me from God's love. That's the same experience that David is talking about in Psalm 23. And it's the same experience that you and I should come to expect and have experienced, that even when we wander off, we don't receive condemnation, we don't receive judgment, we don't receive rejection. We find a God who draws close with grace and mercy and continues to love us. So if you find yourself in that place today, in a dark valley season, maybe of your own making, that you've wandered off what you know God would have for you, know that he hasn't turned his back on you. He hasn't rejected you. Know that just as Paul experienced when he wrote Romans 8, and David has experienced as he's writing Psalm 23, that he is still close beside you. He's there to comfort you. He's there to protect you. And he continues to pursue you with grace and mercy.